In this installment, we're looking at a lot of the different environments within the school, the lighting, the framing, actually, we're going to be looking at quite a lot within this. It's only in the first episode, so if you haven't watched all of Sex Education yet, you're not going to be getting many spoilers out of this. It's just episode 1 still, so don't worry about that. And it's really intriguing, within quick succession, seeing how in this first episode, they're stepping through all kinds of different environments, different lighting states, and different sets. You know, there's some really gritty, grimy stuff, but equally some really high-key, bright, happy stuff as well, and it all juxtaposes depending on which characters are interacting with it and their reason for being there. So let's jump right in. Bang. We're at school. Suddenly everyone is in the shot and everyone is dressed crazy. Schools don't look like this. They're all dressed in lots of layers of colour. They've obviously thought about where they're positioning all of the extras, so they've got this pattern of like pinky, reddy, it's just this pattern of different blocks of colour. And that does become a reoccurring theme. They use it all the time. Also, and you can't see it so much in this shot, they do have a real style for the bikes that they're using. Everything is old, not just the clothes, it's the cars, it's the bikes, and I'll call those out as we go through. So this, I doubt that they're doing much, probably just trying to shoot at the right time of day. It does look fairly cloudy, but everyone is sort of being caught with a fairly homogeneous source, so I don't think that they have done anything here, because everyone's kind of top/back lit with this. They're catching it on all of their edges, and these people over here are getting loads of green. Look, they're just getting tons of green in their hair from that lens. Okay, especially over there. Yep, same there. You can see this girl has lots of light on the top of her head. This guy just here, it's all down top of his head and down this side, and then he's kind of off to a little bit of down there, because he's, I don't know, moving into the tree line or something, or maybe they got a flag there for him just to darken him down so that he's not too obvious. But yeah, not much to say. We've got a fairly wide shot, so it's unlikely they're doing too much. The only thing you could do here, perhaps, would be flag off someone who's too close to the lens, just with a big frame or something, I don't know, 12 foot solid just to the side, just to take him down a bit if you wanted to, if it was worth it. And then maybe if they found that it was an overcast day and they weren't getting the shape they wanted, maybe you could take a big light, I don't know what the biggest lights they had on this were, but take it way back and just beam it across everyone's heads. But this seems too soft for that. It does seem like sun piercing through a little bit of cloud. Next we have these characters pulling up in a car. Again, you've got an old car in the back there. They're driving a fairly old car. I appreciate that people in sixth form wouldn't necessarily have a brand new car, but everything is 80s or 70s feeling. Even the vehicles, even the bikes. You know, she's got a little Brompton style folding bike. Otis's bike is old school, so is his. First interior of the school, styling. We've got this branded school, Moordale Secondary School. We don't have that in the UK. In fact, something I should have called out earlier, we have school uniforms in almost any UK school. School I went to, we wore blazers and shirts and ties and all the rest of it. We don't have this. This is a very Americanized view, and people have called this out a lot. But this whole colour scheme, this whole branding, this whole... You're about to see the jock character with his jacket, sort of team jacket with the Moordale M on. It's a very American view of things, but set in the UK. So it's like this alternate universe where all the houses and all of the interiors and all of the cars and the bikes and the clothes are old, and it's kind of American feeling, but it's set in the UK. It's bizarre. If you were doing this, you would just need a ton of light. They've shaped them off a bit more for these close-ups just here. Again, we've got catch lights in the eyes, you can see, and they're getting their direction from this side. I doubt that they're flagging off anything here. I think they're probably just sticking light over that side and then taking the ambient level and letting it fall off with the ambient level. And if you look at the people in the back, they're just pretty much flat faces, and if anything, it feels like they're top lit more, because it's all under their chins. He's catching a bit of the side light, but these people are just flat blobs in the back. Don't have quite as much shape as Otis does there. I don't really delve much into film theory and the theory of framing in these videos, but I'm going to say something just here. This character has an arc, and I don't want to give away any spoilers at this point, but the way that he is framed and the way that they approach him as a character, because he's the jock, he's the favorite in school, he's a bit of a legend, everyone loves him, he's cool. He's framed in a really oppressive way here. Really oppressive. You've got the whole set behind him. You've got this massive Moordale sign, looks like he's at a rally or something, huge, just in shot there, and it's all just pushing him off to the side. It's kind of a statement. If this was an exterior scene, he would be framed with the horizon above him, so it feels like the world's just pushing down on him, and that does play out for the character. Whether it's intentional or not, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe they just wanted to get that in and they wanted to get him in, and the only way you can do that is sort of like this. He's framed so we're looking up at him a bit, but not as much as would be required to make it like a heroic shot. So he's still being oppressed, even though we're looking up at him a bit, everything's still above him and pushing down, which is interesting. Anyway, lighting wise, he's getting mostly top lit down here, and you can see like under his collar, just all coming down like this, catching his head, it's on top of his head. So it's not a beautiful side light. The only bit that's being like occluded here is underneath his collar like that. So it's not coming across at all, it's just flat light onto him. And you can see, look at the mic, everything is on top, and then as it goes round it falls off to black down there. But it's all just top light, and then the Moordale's being hit with, I guess, like a spot, could be a spot of Fresnel, could have just been whatever they had in this big hall if it was a real location. There are many different lighting states within the school. So we've seen the exteriors, which tend to be some flavour of bright sunlight that we don't get in the UK. That hall was really branded in golden and rich and opulent even. The halls are oppressive. They're really sterile, they're really not warm, not friendly, and it plays because almost any scene that we have in the halls plays out like this, where someone is being bullied or someone's being harassed in some way. It isn't a friendly place, and it doesn't feel like anywhere where our characters will want to be staying. Lighting wise, it's actually really interesting. So they've got all of these tubes. I don't know if you see that, I'll make that red. So all these tubes. And my shout on this would be that they went in and they set dressed this because the lockers and everything, you know, that's, again, totally American view of an English school, the way that it all looks. I would say that they took some like Astera tubes, or, you know, going old school, it would be Kino Flows, but I would assume that here it would be something like Asteras or Quasars, and they've just dressed them in and layered them up so that they can light the entire space, and then they can also shut them off if they need to and create different lighting states, and I think that they do that later on. They have a slight downside. Just here, he is definitely down on this side a little bit, and they do have an edge, and that light is super hot in that scene. And you can see just here, everything just bleaching out along the walls just there. People in the background are catching a lot of light as well, so it isn't like we are finessing light for our characters just here that much. I think that it is just big hallways lit, and then they just do a little bit maybe. We jump to the next shot. Oh, I can't remember his name. He is flat. Flat as flat can be. Even like under his chin is flat. His jacket's flat, everything's flat. It's very rare that I light anything with a light this flat. But from a narrative point of view, I can see that it might make sense in this hallway because no one is sculpted, no one is made to look beautiful. It is all just aggressively top lit and flat. You can see all of those tubes going off. This is why I think perhaps they did this with like Asteras or something, because you'll be able to control it so well and you get tons of level out of it. and looking at how hot they are bright, bright, bright in shot. So I think you could legitimately light most of the space with those and have a lot of control over what you were doing. He's getting a bit of an edge from this. You see just down here, I'm going to do this in red so it stands out. So there is a little bit of shape, but hardly any. Ah, cool. Got another hallway here, a little bit warmer feeling because we've got the wood and the warm floor. A lot of these shots are very low angle because we can see the ceiling and see all the lights. And they've done something fascinating here. I've been looking at this shot and trying to work out what's weird about it. It feels like it's on a Dutch angle. Something's a little bit off kilter here. Otis just bumped into Maeve. All the books have been spilled. And I finally worked out what it is. This center line, let's see if I can draw a line down here, make it straight. Take a look at that. It is definitely off center. It's not perfectly straight. Then if you follow this line down, we get an awesome leading line which just goes off down to this side and then to here, taking that off, and that would go off down there. Didn't realize how much I was going to be talking about theory of framing and stuff before I started this, and very quickly realized that there's so much that I want to call out on the framing in this show. It's really quite cool. I thoroughly respect the way that they've done this. So what's going on? You got these leading lines leading to what would be the center of the frame. So this would really make sense as a shot if it was perfectly centered, kind of Wes Anderson style, and the two characters come and they meet, but it's off kilter. And what they've done is have down this side, this line is actually, I'm going to double it up a bit so you can kind of see it. That is straight. So they've leveled it to this edge, and I've done a reasonable amount of filming where I'm working with things that are architectural, so trying to make spaces and locations look good, and a lot of the photography team at Still Moving work on architectural projects. So something that you very quickly learn is trying to position your camera and your lens so that you get nice, clean, straight lines. A lot of the time, unless you're doing something very stylized, that is the preference. So to do that, you're often thinking about the height that you have to make your camera in order to have it in the center of the line that you're trying to make straight, and then positioning it and leveling it so that that's all really perpendicular to the lens, so you're not looking up at things, you're not looking down at things. And these get exaggerated when you're working on a wide angle lens, so you do have to be quite careful in that respect. Here, they've leveled to that side, and by leveling to that side at this low angle, you're tilting the camera, so you're putting it on a Dutch angle by doing this, but it still feels kind of straight because the way the leading lines are working, and it offsets everything in a really interesting way. I usually, when you see a Dutch angle, I instantly recognize it as that, and it just feels all of a sudden, bang, you've got a Dutch angle, and it kind of sometimes pulls you out of the story, even if it's done too much or without justification. This I thought was really cool. The more I analysed it, the more I kind of really enjoyed it. Lighting wise, windows are on fire. They are completely blown out just now. I'll mark it in red so we can see. So there's a lot of light being pumped through the windows, or it might just be daylight. You know, this might just be daylight ambience. They're doing things to control stuff here. So because we do have characters walking along, and we don't want to necessarily throw too much light in, they've brought down these blinds, and you can actually see just there. They are sort of semi-transparent, they're sort of white, they look a little bit like diffusion frames almost, in terms of what they're doing, and they've done that all the way along the hall. Going back to the very first scene we saw with Otis, it's what they were doing there. They're controlling some of the light by using the set dressing and making sure that they can do that with what they got. You're still getting these hard spots and patches that play on the floor, and that's the theme of the whole thing, but it controls it a bit. Maeve here is really down, all down her side is just shadowed. Same with Otis, actually, as he's turning, he is catching a lot of this shadowing down his side here, and this area is actually very down compared to just further along the hallway here. you've got actually quite a lot of light falling on that, which I guess is bouncing off or coming from this. So I'd imagine that just here they've got like a big neg behind the camera wrapping around this area just to take everything off the walls, because it looks like there's white walls everywhere and that would return an awful lot. So to get that definition of them against the walls and get this kind of cool light down the side of the faces, you'd neg it off and just suck all the light away from that side. Again, I'm going to call out framing just here, and they do this quite a lot. Considering how many of the shots are moving and considering how you have all of these interesting sort of low angle, moving around, orbiting shots, all the rest of these things happening, they do center frame static quite a lot. And this is a really perfect example of it. So we've got the motivation for some top light in here. Very cool looking set. I kind of love the way this is laid out. It's slightly messy, but very clean at the same time. We have some direction to the light within this, and I'm going to skip to the next shot because that's where it starts to happen, but just take this in. This is a wide angle. This is something they're going to do quite a lot, showing an entire environment and then cutting in. Our teacher, again, I can't remember her name. Can't remember anyone's name. I just remember Otis's name. That's about Otis and Maeve. That's all I remember. We've got light hitting down the side of her face, and in fact, it's pretty flat just down the whole side of her body there. We do have a shadow just here. So that shadow for her moves around, obviously. If this was a movie shot, you'd be able to see it. So it does show that she's being lit from behind the camera and potentially slightly off to the side just here. But it's a very big, you can barely see the shadow. You would be hard pressed in a static shot to actually make this out. So looking at what's going on, you can just about see it there. Very, very soft. So you've got to have like an 8-foot, 12-foot frame just acting as the soft light source for this. It's not something I do an awful lot of, lighting like this, where it's completely flat. Everything's very saturated, but this kind of thing only works, in my opinion, in narrative when you are really carefully controlling the set dressing and the styling and the characters within your scene. Something else to call out. The lens is playing just here. I'm going to draw a straight line from this side of shot to that side of shot, and you can see the bow of the lens. This is all distorting. So in the center, it's pulled in, to the edges it's pushed out. You catch this a lot in some Wes Anderson films where he's using a very wide angle lens, like the Grand Budapest Hotel, when they're standing, and it's Jude Law era, when the hotel's all brutalist. Jude Law era, and they're standing at the desk, you get this bowing effect, you get this distortion because of the type of lens that's being used. So it's a very vintage feel to it. Nothing else to call out on that. Okay, short siding of Otis just here. We've got the dominant feature of this being the light just here, and that's obviously motivating everything that's happening just there. Seeing bully character Adam. They do come to me eventually, these names. Otis is looking off this way. We're short-siding him, so he's looking down this side of the lens, and it's like me in this scenario. So he's looking off to the side there. We're shooting up at him. Cut to the next shot. Everything is awkward here. And then bang. The difference in framing is what gives this impact, and we are Otis at that point. We want to know, we want to look around, we're curious, we're shooting slightly up, awkwardly off to the side of the frame. And then when we turn around, Maeve is flat on to the lens. She is basically at lens height. We are pretty much center framing her there, give or take. All of the leading lines are taking us towards Maeve. So we've got this one, and even down here, and her desk. It's all pointing in towards Maeve, and she's just flipping him the finger. And that's the impact. That is just seeing instantly, after you've been curiously looking over the shoulder and it's all awkward, and then bang. very effective way of using the camera position, using the lensing, and using your camera height to create impact and create a discrepancy between the two characters. She's cool, she's on the level, she's just there. Otis is furtive and over the shoulder and kind of the camera's low, it's all awkward, and he's not in the center of frame. She is in the center. Lighting wise, she is being hit with all of this from the window, and we do see that all down the side of her hair just here. But it is, again, quite nice. It's wrapping around, it's soft. She's got downside, but not very, very down. And we do see shadows coming down from the books just there. That's all shadowed, that's all shadowed. This side is catching the light from the window. Coming in that way, like this. I would say that to do this, you do probably need either a lot of return or a bounce of some sort just to take her level and soften it off a little bit. I don't think that you would just be boosting from the window and then relying on that top light, because if you look at her head, it isn't like she's getting lots of spots of hot light coming in from the top. It's just pushing up, almost pushing up from below. So I reckon that they've got just a lot of bounce just here behind the camera and off to the side, just to fill all of that in so that she doesn't go off to a higher contrast ratio for that. So it's another cool angle. We're quite low to the ground. We're coming in, leading down. There are people dotted around, and we're getting flat light on the side of them just here. All flat, nothing going on. We'll cut to the next shot, which is close up, and the light that was flat because we were on that side is now shaped. And you can see on the side of his face where it's playing just here, all down there. Not much level difference, but we can definitely see he's down a bit on this side. So I would say perhaps they have some kind of flagging going on up here, just a little bit. But that might even just be, suppose you're in this situation and you don't want to create a massive contrast ratio, but you do want to stop the skylight just washing it out completely. If you bought in something that wasn't black and just put it over them, you would take some out, but you'd still leave a little bit coming in. You could also try it with a silk, but you might be fiddling around an awful lot to try and get the ratio right to do that. Let's see a similar thing when we flip to the front, but you can see the ratio is not so strong just here. It is still present, but I don't think that we're nearly as bright on this side or down on this side as we were in the previous shot. And this is interesting because he should be getting the light on this side of his face, but he's not. The light is coming in this way for him, which is the nice way of doing it. So you have light coming inside on and the dark side to camera, but it's the opposite perhaps to what it would be. All of this is now down where we should have it the other way around, but that's a cheat which happens all the time. It's the better looking way of doing it. And we've got the characters looking off this way. So they're looking down the short side of the frame, and we've got all of this space, all of this negative up here, which is, I don't want to say wasted space, it is a method of framing. And it feels right for this, but you do have to be careful when you do it. Mr. Robot is a fantastic example of this taken to the extreme, and it works ever so well in that series, and it works as a kind of plot point as well. It fits with everything. Experiment with it, but it's easy to go very, very wrong when you're doing that. This sequence fits with the exterior look of all of the stuff at school. We got one more location within the school which becomes a bit of a feature, and that's this abandoned toilet block. It is dingy, it is horrible, and they got this really wicked tracking shot just here where they move along and actually have a little bit of a kind of pull in on the characters just there as they're moving across, just to establish this space, establish the fact the ceiling's falling down. It's grim, but it works so well, and it's such a important location that they did spend the time. I mean, to do a shot like this where you're tracking through the roof space, looking down with all of this to get it to the point where the set actually works for that, must have been quite a lot of effort. So they've really gone to town to make this work. All the lighting is window light here, and we got a lot of negative. So where before I said that in this series generally, we're not finding these high contrast ratios, this location is one place where we actually do get those really high contrast ratios because it's a bit dingier, a bit darker. There's a shady character to the whole location. It's a little bit seedy. Now we have a much, much higher contrast ratio on, I can't remember her name, just here. Lit with this window, works really well, all just coming into the side, but still pretty beautiful light. We've got a couple of pops in her eye, just there, one there, and a bigger one just here. The bigger one is going to be what is basically lighting her face and giving this soft look, and then the others are probably just elements of the location, windows, that kind of thing, just popping into her eyeball, but not really playing all that much on her face. Got a big dark area just here, but for the most part it is just feeling like that's the window light coming in. To do this, I reckon you could get away with a smaller 4-foot frame or something like that closer in. You don't need big frames when you're working in this. In fact, big frames start to become really problematic in this kind of location where you do want things to go off to darkness. You need a lot of flagging, you need a lot of control to make those frames do what you need. And for a close-up shot, totally not worth it. You can get away with a smaller fixture, you get away with smaller frames, and you bring them in closer. You can use grids, you can control them a lot more easily, and it will allow you to perhaps work on a reduced crew, a reduced scale to get these kind of shots, so you don't need to put as much effort in. Good contrast between the key and the fill side just here. A lot of shaping around her face, so it's flattering, whilst at the same time being in this kind of dingy, dark environment. Maeve's light feels perhaps a little bit harder down the edge of her face, just here. But it's very similar to what we were seeing before, so move on. Another example of an interesting frame here. We got this light coming in, and it isn't falling that far into the space. It really is just tickling along these sinks. And you can see, actually I've just covered it, you can see the shadow just here, and that's giving you a really good idea of where this is actually being cast. If I just draw that shadow line, that's the angle light's coming in at. And if you follow that angle, so if we take that again and we follow it, that's about where it gets to. So it hits the sinks, and then it looks like it's been flagged off a little bit. You can see a little bit of lightness along the floor down here. This is all slightly illuminated from that light, but the sink is the dominant feature, and this windowsill just here. Maeve is not completely obscured within the shot because these windows act as a frame, so she is almost silhouette. And we've got this cool thing where this entire frame is split in two, and we've got this mirror world just here, which is even darker and dingier because you've got all the imperfections and the dirt on the mirror. And we see Maeve twice, so it's really hard to know where to look. You're kind of drawn to the center of this frame because of everything that's happening with all the lines. You've got so many lines going on in the roof just here, taking you in that direction, pointing you in this direction, and everything with the light as well, just creating this really obvious area just here where you kind of want to look. But then Maeve moves, so the movement catches your eye, and it happens on either edge of the frame. So it's playing the frame as a character and playing it so that it actually does something to evoke a sense of the space that she's inhabiting and really allow that space to become part of the character of the piece. I would assume again for this that they have, you wouldn't necessarily have to have HMIs to do this. You could do this with powerful LED fixtures, S360Cs. You could probably even get away with some of the smaller sky panels to do this. In fact, I reckon because most of this scene is so down, you could get away with 4Ks, maybe even 2.5Ks to pull the scene off. It wouldn't need to be massive. If you're going for something like this and you don't want to risk doing it with natural light, You can do it with these smaller fixtures if you're willing to have it play like it does here, with most of the room being pretty dark. But it's very easy to go off to completely black, so you do need to be able to layer it up and make sure that you have enough light bouncing around that you can actually have the space work. It's kind of cool and gritty and dirty, and yeah, something that I can see a lot of different types of film wanting. Horror, if you want something post-apocalyptic, a lot of people are doing that at the moment. This would work and definitely achievable without having to splash out on a massive crew and massive lighting fixtures. This is pretty cool. Maeve gets close to the window and we've got more of a downside coming into play. In fact, everything does feel even a little bit darker. The window is less blown out perhaps than it was before, and she's getting a softer, more flattering light. In fact, it's super, super soft all the way down her face, and the only bits that are being occluded are her hands on this side, where we've got the catching of light all the way along here and all the way along here. I would say if you had like a 4-foot silk outside with some light bouncing into it, maybe booklight it, that would give you this look. If you were doing it with, say, a softbox, then if you had, we've got an octabox, which is 150, that would work for this. So you wouldn't need anything too big, and because it's so well controlled, you just bring that in, and this is what you would get. The inside just here is really down. Maybe you have something in here. If it's daylight and there's another window, this might have enough level, but you might need to add something in so that you keep some of the character in here so that you can still see the graffiti on the wall just here. You can still see all the imperfections and the different textures that are going on throughout the location, because you do want the location to feature. So you have to bring in some light, perhaps, just to add that in. But very flattering look. Actually, even her cigarette is playing just there. So the levels can't be crazy high. This doesn't tally with that because the window is so much more blown out. So I think that in this scenario, this was more like what we had for the first shots where they're doing the wides, and then when they come in for the close-ups here, there and there, they're finessing everything. And it kind of plays out because we've got a lot more haziness going on in that shot than we do in this shot. The wides are different. That's always the case. You cheat the wides and then you come in and you refine things for the close-up.